Hey, today we are talking about the U.S. Census. I got 35 tips about the U.S. Census that you may not know about, so let's get started. So the U.S. Census was conducted every 10 years starting in 1790 and is available to us all the way up to 1950, if I recall. So, by the way, there is a handout for this. So know that tip number one, starting with the 1790 through 1840 census, recorded almost no information. It only names the head of household with tick marks for ages of other household members. The census day was not always on June 1st. In 1790, it was August 2nd, and it wasn't until 1830 that it shifted to June 1st, and later April 1st in 1930. Census takers could take months to process all of their paperwork and get all of the visits done. It didn't happen all on one day. So keep that in mind. It could have taken up to 9 months for an enumerator to finish his job. The 1850 and 1860 schedules had separate slave schedules, while it didn't really name them by name, but often by age and gender. The 1890 census was almost completely lost to a fire in 1921. Some states had their own state schedules. These were usually in the middle, in between the decades. Iowa, Kansas, New York are just a couple examples. Make sure you check the Family Search Wiki to find out what states had state census as opposed to federal census. The 1850 census is the first time all free individuals were named in the household. It wasn't until the 1880 census that the relationships to the head of household were recorded. Prior to that, people make assumptions that everybody listed in the household were family members, and often they were, but they could have been cousins or nieces and nephews. Other young people may not necessarily be the children of the head of household. Some censuses listed military service. For example, in 1840, it listed the veterans of the Revolutionary War and their widows. The 1930 and 1940 census recorded whether you owned a radio or not. I think while some of the information that I had discovered talked about the reason for this was for economic understanding of the household, I believe it was because they wanted to decide if radio communication was a viable way of communicating, especially during wartime. Now, keep in mind that Native Americans were not always recorded until about the 1900 census. They were excluded from census records. So the question is, were census records always correct? And no, they weren't. Sometimes the census enumerators would ask the neighbors if there were children in the household, especially maybe teenagers. They may have asked the teenagers, how old was mom and dad, if they were out working or something. So it could be that you find errors in the census. Yes, believe it or not, government records can be incorrect. On the subject of being incorrect, believe it or not, some censuses had people recorded twice. Yes, my ancestor for one. Some censuses asked about naturalization and immigration status. In fact, the 1900, 1910, 1920, and 1930 censuses asked when immigrants arrived and if they were naturalized. Economic questions became common over time. After a while, they even asked about real estate, personal property, and the values of those properties. Questions about race evolved over time as well. So you'll find at different times questions about race, and other times you won't. Some of the censuses recorded information about disabilities. In fact, the 1830 and detailed more in 1880 disabilities like deafness, blindness, and insanity were noted. Not every state was included in the census. For example, the territories, before they were established and statehood happened, some of the territories were not included in the census. New states like Texas weren't always counted early on. So make sure you check the Family Search Wiki to find out if the states in which you are researching were enumerated and when. I don't want to get too close to the birdhouse because I think there is some birds nesting in there. I've been seeing a lot of activity over there. Anyway, the 1940 census also had a question about where they were, if they were in the same place in 1935. So you might want to add that information to your research notes and or your timeline. In 1950, they added questions about income and education. The original 1790 census was taken by marshals, not enumerators. The 1790 through 1820 censuses were lost. Some states lost completely. Those were states like New Jersey and Georgia. Some were completely lost, some due to the War of 1812. Some of the women acted as enumerators early, not so much early on, but later. Into the 1800s, you may find women as enumerators on the census. Prisoners, patients, and military members were counted separately. Special institution schedules captured people living in prisons, asylums, and military barracks. Now, if you have someone in a military barrack, make sure you're checking the military schedules too, depending on the year. Now, keep in mind that mortality schedules were in 1850 and 1860 for the 365 days prior to enumeration date. Now, 1930 asked about veteran service, and the 1940 census asked about education and literacy. Still watering. So keep in mind too that census takers often corrected their own forms. Sometimes the supervisors would follow up and correct them as well. Hey, also know that transcription errors happened a lot now, especially in the early census records. Those were transcribed by human people. In the later censuses, they're starting to become transcribed by machine, but a lot of times they're verified by people as well. But those early censuses, they could have errors in them in the index because of transcription errors. Also know that the census enumerators also tried to enumerate the homeless, which was a challenge to enumerate the transient people. The Native American census records were created separately from 1885 to 1940, I believe it was, were considered the Indian rolls. The 1860 census included real estate and personal property values. This helped them to understand the economic status of the counties in which they were enumerated. And here's a tip: if you find real estate value, go look for the deeds. Some of the territories before statehood, like the Dakotas and New Mexico, had their own special census schedules. Again, check Family Search to see if those are available. And by the way, did you know that the 2020 census was the first one conducted online? Most everyone reported the census online in 2020 for the first time. Due to privacy laws, the 72-year Privacy Act was created, and this is why you can only get census records up to 1850 currently. So it'll be, I don't know, another 8 years before we can get to the 1960 census. So that is why. Now in other countries, it's like a 100-year Privacy Act. Just saying. Well, that kind of concludes the backyard tour and the 35 tips that you may not know about the U.S. Census. There are other videos on the screen for your binge watching pleasure, and hey, come join us at the Genealogy TV Academy, where you can get all of the handouts and all of the notes and all of the videos all in one place.